Covering the Philadelphia Eagles, they're what I like to call they're the gift that just keeps on giving, right?
Absolutely.
A team that
Win or
has
lose.
win or lose, but for a team that's won so much, they're so polarizing.
Mhm.
And for many reasons, Jalen Hurts is one of the most polarizing quarterbacks in football. I wouldn't say intentionally, but he's just a guy that his name just sparks a ton of debate. AJ Brown, same thing. Jalen Carter, same thing. Saquon Barkley, same thing. This Eagles team is littered with polarizing individuals, who have an immense level of talent. When you think about the way the Eagles season has gone with the 4-0 start, although it was rocky, then you had the 2-game losing streak where they got embarrassed. Then you had the 2-game winning streak where they had a resurgence to their former selves. What's been your opinion on how the Philadelphia Eagles have been covered over the course of these past 8 weeks? Because again, to me, as a former Super Bowl champion, I question how much grace and respect they're being given, in particular when it comes to Jalen Hurts. What's your thoughts on how the Eagles and Jalen Hurts, and we can even throw in AJ Brown in the conversation because today was a big day for him with that story. But let's just take it piece by piece. Let's start with the Eagles as a whole. What's been your opinion on how the Eagles have been covered over the past 8 weeks, being the reigning Super Bowl champions?
Ooh, where do we start? I think one of the big misconceptions of, covering this team or how this team has been is that they came into the season as a perfect team, and they're not. I mean, they're really a different team. And, not to sound like coach speak and all, but Super Bowl champions, that was last year. Well, the 2024 Eagles, that was last year. It's been a lot of turnover, especially on defense. And again, you have turnover at the offensive coordinator position. And there was going to be a level of or a period of orientation. Some people call it an extended preseason, but that's just the reality because you only play 3 preseason games, and the starters, they don't even really play in the preseason. So a lot of people take that as an excuse, but it is also a bit of a reality and part of the story. So it was going to take time for Kevin Patullo to um, ascend as offensive coordinator because he's just new at the job. Even though he's been in the building for several years, he's new at the job. And even I made a point where this was something that was underreported. A couple of things that are underreported that Jalen said himself right after the Super Bowl when I wasn't there that day, but reporters came to him and said, "Okay, what do you think about Kevin Patullo potentially being the offensive coordinator?" He said, and of course he caught himself because he's probably more guarded than anyone else, that he paraphrased and said that he may not be ready for the job. And I
Really?
don't think that was a knock on him. Yeah, it's on video. You can just look back at it. He said he may not be ready for the job in so many words. And it doesn't say that he's not qualified or he wouldn't do well at it, but he pretty much said that it's going to be a new role for him. And I think you could read
Mm.
between the lines. It says, okay, it's going to take some time for him to grow into the job. And someone that's smart and a veteran quarterback, this is even despite being Super Bowl MVP, someone that's smart and is savvy and a veteran as Jalen Hurts, he is keen enough to not only know that, but express that. And people probably even took it the wrong way, saying, oh, yeah, he's not qualified. But I don't think that was the case. And he was public enemy number one even when they were winning. But it's going to take some time. And then again, on the defensive side, you don't have a Milton Williams, you don't have a Josh Sweat. Um, you have that turnover. No Darius Slay, no C.J. Gardner Johnson, all those guys. So it was going to take a few weeks for uh, this defense to gel. And I think one of your the people on your chat said that okay, we're spoiled as a fan base, and I think we are. And I think Vic Fangio even spoiled us because the defense was so great last year, and they put on such a you know uh, such a murderous performance during the Super Bowl and even in the NFC Championship game that okay, maybe we expect this every week, but that's not realistic with all of the turnover. So I think they're in great shape overall, being 6-2. And I thought these last two games against the Giants and against the Vikings were just as important as the first four games. And the first time around with the Giants, that was an embarrassing loss, and they deserved all the criticism in the world because I thought they just looked unprepared. The
Yeah,
Broncos, you could probably say, looking back on it now, they're a good team. They're one of the best teams in the NFL. So, I mean, you could probably take that loss as okay. That's probably um, a legitimate loss, even though they had a chance to win that game as well. So,
right.
but I think overall they're in good shape considering that everybody was on edge to say, okay, maybe this is another Super Bowl hangover where he had PTSD from the 2023 season, which I think is apples and oranges.
Yeah, that's when people bring up the 2023 season, I just feel like there's so many nuances that are just
Mm,
excluded from that conversation. I mean, you have so
right,
much more experience from a coaching perspective on that defense, right? And that offense, believe it or not, was a top 10 offense in 2023. They just were a little dysfunctional or a little herky jerky, I guess you'll say. But
right,
defense was their real problem in 2023.
exactly.
And that offense was constantly being put behind the eight ball. Bringing it back to the 2025 campaign, we discussed the way the Eagles have been covered. Let's hone in a little bit more the Jalen Hurts angle of it. Jalen Hurts has been a guy who's been, again, I say polarizing, not by any fault of his own, just a guy that is very measured, very buttoned up, very professional. He's the kind of guy that can run your CEO company. He's the kind of guy that you wouldn't mind your daughter taking a prime or marrying. He checks all the boxes. Just from uh the aesthetic, the way he carries himself. He's very business oriented, very, very self-aware, very intentional. And he's a guy who came into the league with a chip on his shoulder that was kind of developed just based off his experiences.
Mhm.
Obviously, being benched in Alabama, then having a resurgence to Oklahoma, um, stayed at Alabama, got his bachelor's, got his master's from Oklahoma. He's a guy who's educated. He's a guy that's really built himself up from year one, from his first year starting in 2021 to now. I mean, he's not even the same player, and like it's no comparison to what he was in 2020 and 2021, right? Why doesn't a guy like that sell as much as he should to the masses? I feel like he's the most relatable guy to America than, I don't know, a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen, guys that were gifted with everything, all the gifts, the height, the size. Or to me, Jalen Hurts is what you aspire to be. Jalen Hurts is what movies are written about.
Yeah, it's a number of things, and I think you hit it right on the head, Tone. And you must have been in the room, or you must have had our room bugged when I interviewed Mike Quick a couple months ago, because what you said about Jalen Hurts, how you described him, he's everything that you would want, a young man to be, someone you would want to run your company or marry your daughter, or so to speak. He checks all those boxes. That's really exactly what Mike Quick said to me when I interviewed about Jalen Hurts and how special that he is. And I think that we have to sit back and realize that he is special. And special can mean a whole lot of things. But going back to your initial point or initial question, he doesn't fit the part. He doesn't fit the part of what uh, most people still believe a quarterback should look like. All right. I wrote a column a few weeks ago, and I'm saying that okay, we have a lot of us. Well, not me personally, but a lot of football fans have an idea of what a quarterback is supposed to look like,
Mm.
and he doesn't fit any of that. He checked all the boxes that you just mentioned, but for in a lot of people's eyes, okay, a lot of Eagles fans eyes, he doesn't check those boxes because he doesn't look the part. And I wrote that he is that one aspiring actor that he goes into every audition and he nails it, right? But when you're a casting director or you're the producer and everything, you have in mind who you want that lead actor to be.
Mm.
But when Jalen Hurts walks into that audition, he nails it every freaking time. And the guy that you had in mind, you have to cast at that point. You have to cast Jalen Hurts in every role that he auditions for, because he nails the interview, he nails the audition. You have to hire him, and the person that you had in mind, the prototype that you wanted for that job, you can't hire that guy because Jalen Hurts just overwhelms you every time.
Mm.
And that's what happened initially when he went into the NovaCare Center, and that's why Carson Wentz is no longer here. And I mean, I know what the years have passed with that, and these were things that I was told, and I wasn't even really covering the team like that then. But I knew as soon as he walked into the door, Carson Wentz's days were done. And also, you have to factor in too, Wentz was supposed to be the quarterback for 10, 12, 15 years here. And when that happened, in a lot of people's minds, they could not they could not process that quick change. But that's how great a personality Jalen Hurts is. That's how hard a worker he is. And
Yeah,
another thing that's also unreported, real quick, Tone,
yeah.
is he's the son of a coach. How how much do you even hear people talk about that? I've written about that. A couple other people have written about it, but you never hear that in the broadcast. You never hear that. You never read that in most articles, on the sports talk shows, the talking
Yeah.
heads, everything. You never hear that. But if he was white with blonde hair and he was the son of a coach, you wouldn't hear the end of it.
Yeah, you're on to something. A guy like Jalen Hurts, he's the kind of guy that if you're around him long enough, it who you are will be exposed more than who he is. Like he just seems like
Absolutely.
the kind of guy that he filters out his life very well. Um, but again, being the franchise quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles and delivering the way he has on the contract, because my whole mindset is when you draft a guy, the number one question you should be asking yourself: above how beautiful a ball he throws, can I win with this guy? Can this
Can he win?
guy win the
And
big
what
one?
has he done since he's been here? All he's done was win.
All he does is
And
win.
it's all he cares about. I've talked to teammates. I've talked to some of the people who cover him. Okay. Even, the few times that I've gotten a chance to ask questions of Nick Sirianni, all Jalen Hurts cares about is winning. He really doesn't care what it looks like. And that's another problem that a lot of fans have. We're so caught up, and a lot of this is probably Philly too, but because again, I've been here all my life, so right. But we want winning to look a certain way. Okay, we want our offense to look a certain way. We want our defense to look a certain way. I mean, there's a time where fans wanted Eagles defense to blitz on every single play because they go back to the
I
Buddy
remember.
Ryan
I remember those days. I remember that.
days. Full blitz, all out blitz every day, every play, I should say, right? And then they want the offense to, score 40 points a game and then have over 500 yards of offense. I mean, that's all pretty, but does that week after week resonate into or equate to winning football games? I mean, you have a lot.
Then
I've seen a lot of quarterbacks. I've watched football for well over 40 years. I've seen a lot of quarterbacks throw for 4,000 yards, 5,000 yards. Some make it through. Some make it to the Super Bowl, the Tom Brady's of the world, or
Mhm.
Patrick Mahomes of the world. But it's really Jalen Hurts is now he's into, if you even want to call him elite, he's into elite company. He's into rare company. And
Mm.
I wrote and I posted at nauseum what he did even winning the Super Bowl, just to even get back to the Super Bowl and win it after
That's what I'm
losing.
saying. The
He's won
story.
over four quarterbacks in the Super Bowl era, four quarterbacks. And he's the first one to do it since I was in diapers.
OJ, the story itself to lose the way they did, perform at that level and lose, and then you have the 2023 season and you guys stumble, then you come back in 2024 and you rise like a phoenix. I mean, there's something poetic about the Jalen Hurts journey that I just feel like every man, every woman should be
Absolutely
able to have
poetic. Oh,
should
yeah.
have no problem supporting. But nonetheless, tribalism in sports exists, and it's hard for people to, it's hard for people to let go of their priors, right?
Yep.
And a guy like Jalen Hurts, people don't want to let go of the fact that he was benched for Tua. Well, Tua's making it very easy to forget about that. But
and, and
go
one
ahead,
more
Brizzy, go.
thing, Tone, just to add to just the history of it, just the fine history. I watched Dan Marino. I was a big Dan Marino fan, big
Mhm.
Randall Cunningham fan. He never made Super Bowl, of course. But Dan Marino had, I mean, he was like light years ahead as far as quarterbacks is concerned. And when he went to the Super Bowl in 1984, and he lost to the 49ers, got blown out by the 49ers.
Mhm.
And they said, oh, yeah, he'll be back. He'll be back. He never got back to the Super Bowl. Never. I mean, you can go into, you can debate why he didn't or why he never did. He
Mhm.
still had a phenomenal Hall of Fame career, but he never got back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
John Elway, he didn't win after he went there 3 times and lost. And it wasn't until he had a running game with Terrell Davis that he finally won a Super Bowl. You can get there. You can get there multiple times, but to get there once and lose and get right back within 2 years,
Not
and we
many.
don't get us we don't get us guy the credit. People saying, "Oh yeah, he gets carried and everything." Every Super Bowl winning quarterback gets carried. Everyone. Even Tom Brady when he won in Tampa Bay. All right, that defense won that Super Bowl.
Yeah, technically his best year with Tampa Bay was the final year in Tampa Bay. Statistically,
Exactly,
you know
exactly.
what
I
I
think
mean?
he's threw for over 5,000 yards.
Yeah,
His
led.
first couple years in New England and everything. I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
he orchestrated the comeback to win the Super Bowl, but that was a defensive team.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah,
mean, we also when we take into account Jalen Hurts and what he's accomplished, we also have to look at history and how much he's defied it. And again, I wrote about it. So and it's there. This is just not all my opinion. It's based
right.
on history. And I'm a huge student of history with sports, especially in NFL.
Yeah, for sure. Again, like I said, your fairness for Jalen Hurts is one of the things that attracted me to your writing. It just just your your tweets
Thank
and
you.
so on and so forth. Um, Now, and everything we said about this Eagles team and how they become the standard for winning, how consistent they've been, how spoiled Eagles fans have been, even a little insecure about being successful. The Jalen Hurt, the Jalen Hurts arc and everything he stands for, how he's conducted himself and everything he cares about as far as developing himself and developing his team and what they've been able to accomplish as a whole. Why do people think AJ Brown wants to leave something like this? Because obviously we know how AJ Brown has conducted himself when the team isn't playing up to their potential. And I've always argued with people, hey, well, maybe you don't like the way he did it, but ask yourself, was he wrong about what he said? And for the most part, he's been right in his sentiment, but maybe people have felt he's been wrong in his execution. So AJ Brown, a new article today dropped via the Athletic in the New York Times. It was written by Brooks Kubina. Um, Very strong article. Gave people a lot of insight, but I felt like it was things I already knew, mainly because when AJ Brown speaks, I tend to listen. And everything he mentioned in that article, as far as getting a thrill from beating his opponents and um, wanted to be one of the greatest, wanting to be dominant, how much work he puts into his craft, and how much he loves winning, and how much he wants to be a part of winning, and how much he loves his guys and wants to be the guy to take all the bullets for the team when things go wrong. He's worn that on his sleeve since being here, and it's become more exposed over the past year and a half, probably since when he called in the WIP that one day and kind of set the record straight a bit. But AJ Brown has kind of had this weird relationship with the city, this weird relationship with the media. What's been your perspective on AJ Brown and how he's been covered in the city? Do you think he's been given a fair shake? Do you think a lot of the stuff that's going on with him is self-inflicted? Is he misunderstood? How do you do the math when it comes to this equation that is AJ Brown?
Well, it could be all of the above. I mean, he's layered, and he's an interesting individual. He's also a complicated individual. And one of the things that you mentioned an article and all, with respect, um, one of the things that I try to do as a journalist is, listen, I'm an urban kid from West Philly, right? So being black in America is also later too, because being black in the Northeast is a different experience than being black in the Deep South, and that's where AJ
Yes.
Brown is from, right? That's where Devontae Smith is from, um, and to some degree Jalen Hurts, even though he comes from a different dynamic. in the Houston area. But this is what I take into account when I try to interview these guys. I asked AJ Brown before last season, before they left for Brazil. I really asked him. This is before we knew any of this, or any possible tension with Jalen Hurts or not getting the ball or anything of that nature. I asked him. I said, "How do you like it here in Philadelphia?" I said, "How's the city treated you?" Because I wanted to ask all those things because it's Philly's a different world, not only from even though these guys are mostly in South Jersey, right? But I digress. But
No, you're right
how's
though. I
Philly?
mean, Philly is different, and I mean, I'm born and
Yeah,
raised in Philly. I just moved to Texas 2 years ago, but I'm
yeah,
Philly through and through. And my,
yeah.
my wife always says, all y'all from Philly, y'all Philly men, y'all got a lot of healing to do."
Oh yeah. Oh, we do. We do. Oh, for sure. For sure. We can do another show on that alone,
For
right?
sure, for
But
sure.
anyway, but it's a lot of layers there. So that's why I take that into account when I interview these guys, because I
Right.
know they're from a different dynamic, right? But you said a lot of what AJ Brown said is true, but with perspectives, right? You had to put it on perspective. But what I try to lay out and what I have laid out is okay, um, he aspires to be the very best in the game. But I look back at AJ Brown's career, his fourth season here at Philadelphia. Not only has he been a Super Bowl champion, he's also been a three-time All Pro, all in Philly, not in Tennessee, all with Jalen Hurts as his quarterback. Okay. He's also got a large extension. And
Twice.
another thing, too, um, he already holds several team records and a couple of NFL records. So my question to AJ Brown is, if I when I get a chance to talk to him again, which is very tough because everybody's always at his locker
Mhm.
every win or lose. But my question to him is, okay, what does that look like, right? If if this is
Mhm.
not enough for you, not getting the ball enough and everything, but this is something that he had to keep in mind too, because Devontae Smith was already on this team. Um, Giles Goddard was already on this team. The only change within the past 2 years was Saquon Barkley. Okay. And they were already primarily a running team because also Miles Sanders ran for over 1,000 yards.
Swift as well, yeah.
DeAndre Swift ran for over 1,000 yards, right? So they've always had a running game. So, I mean, AJ Brown, he holds the Eagles record for most receptions for a wide receiver. He broke Mike Quick's record for most receiving yards. I mean, he's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. I
Mhm.
think three actually.
Yeah,
So
3
this is all
consecutive
made him all
All-Pro
pro.
seasons, yeah.
So I
Mhm.
mean, what is missing? Does he want? I mean, he's had multiple 90 catch seasons. I mean, does he want to break the all-time catch record? Does he want to have 2,000 yards receiving? What does that look like in the grand scheme of you already being a champion, already being an perennial all pro?
Mm.
So, and again, within the dynamic of the team, I mean, I'm all for records. I'm a historian, by nature.
Right.
And people debated with me during the last week of the season whether Saquon Barkley should go for Eric Dickerson's record, and I said he should not because he had to win three games in the playoffs as opposed to two, and it worked out.
Yeah.
One friend of mine still argues with me saying that I was wrong, but
Wasn't
because he
wrong.
was saying, okay, why can't he do both? I said, okay, it's a physical game. You saw how brutal even that playoff game against the Rams was, right?
Yeah.
So in the snow and the elements, and that was if I can real quick, Tone,
Yeah, please.
um, that was one of my favorite games to cover because after that game, I got just so many nuggets because again, the dynamic of being in the Northeast where we were used to snow as opposed to being in the South. For a lot of Eagles players, both black, white, old, young, that was really their first game playing in the elements of snow.
You're right. Yeah,
For
no, you're
Devontae
right.
Smith to look me in the eye and saying that I couldn't see, I couldn't plant, I couldn't cut, that was all. I mean, that was all special because people were wondering why the Rams stayed into that game because it was as much of an obstacle for the Eagles as it was for the Rams. So
Mhm.
going back to AJ Brown, I just want to know, okay, what does that look like being the very best? Because there are a lot wide receivers in the NFL who are the very best, and they have no chance to win the Super Bowl. Look at Justin Jefferson in Minnesota. They're looking for a quarterback right now.
You could take it as far as to say Myles Garrett in Cleveland,
Perfect example.
and he took the money, and he was, remember, he did that whole he did all that peacocking at Radio Row at the Super Bowl, walking around saying, hey, we're looking for a team that, the Eagles would be a team I'd be interested in. He brought up, he was sitting with Mina Kimes, just running off the mouth.
And
He even penned a
I
letter
ain't mad
to
at it in a sense because again, with the NFL, the average career span is what, between 3 and 4 years. So you want to get the money, but
hey, get your money,
how
OJ.
do you balance that, right? Being the
Yeah,
very best of your position, or do you want to win? Um, it's a fine line.
it's
And
tough.
I'm glad I don't have to make those decisions either as a player or even as an executive, because
Yeah.
those are tough decisions. But again, my only question to AJ Brown is, and I really didn't think about it this deep until you asked me, Tone. So thank you.
Mhm.
But what does that look like? I need to,
Well, I mean, you tweeted about it. You
yeah.
said it. You essentially said, "Hey, you've done this, you've done that. You're decorated.
Well
What more
accomplished.
is there? What more is there to do instead of just keep playing and stay at this pace?"
If you're named All Pro, whether you're first team or second team, okay, you're literally named one of the top 5 receivers in the league. Okay, do you want to go from second team All Pro to first team All Pro? And what does that look like in sacrifice of the team?
Mm,
Okay, are you going to get 130 catches? Does that mean that Saquon Barkley has less carries? And then, how does that go into the grand scheme of winning games and winning another championship?
right.
And maybe for some players, a championship isn't all that is cracked up to be. I mean, he even hinted around that, saying that, okay, that's it. What do we do now? It's back to the grind. And I get it because, a lot of us are entrenched in, just the work ethic, just
The journey,
working, just
yeah.
the work, the journey. Right. And that's something that Jalen has, talked extensively about.